When my sister Elena announced her engagement to Marcus Whitfield at our family's flagship restaurant, I smiled and applauded with everyone else. 2 weeks later, I terminated our exclusive catering contract with Whitfield Hospitality Group, costing them millions in canceled events. Blood might be thicker than water, but humiliation has consequences they never saw coming. I still remember the shocked expressions on their faces when they realized what I'd done. If you've ever been treated as invisible by your own family while they profit from your hard work, you might understand why I couldn't let this slide. Before I tell you how everything unfolded, this family drama taught me lessons about self-respect that changed my life forever. My name is Sophia Moretti, and this is my story. I was never supposed to be the business mind in our family. That distinction belonged to my older sister Elena, the golden child who inherited our grandmother's beauty along with what everyone assumed was her business acumen. At 28, Elena had the kind of effortless charm that made investors open their wallets and event planners beg for her attention. I, on the other hand, was always described as detail-oriented and hardworking, code words for the sister who handled the boring stuff while Elena took the credit. Our family business, Nonna's Table, started as a single Italian restaurant founded by our grandmother Rosa Moretti 60 years ago. After getting my degree in hospitality management from Cornell, I came back home instead of accepting offers from prestigious hotel chains in New York. The company needed a complete operational overhaul, and I knew I could help. Sophia has always been good with the numbers, my mother Isabella would say with a dismissive wave, as if my business degree and the revenue increases I'd implemented were some cute hobby rather than the foundation, keeping our restaurant empire profitable. While Elena held the title of Vice President of Operations, her actual contributions to Nonna's Table were minimal at best. She attended wine tastings with potential partners, charmed food critics over elaborate dinners, and took credit for expansions I had meticulously planned and executed. Meanwhile, I worked 70-hour weeks as Director of Business Development, negotiated our vendor contracts, managed our finances across 12 locations, and ensured we remained profitable in an increasingly competitive market. Your sister brings in the clients. My father Antonio would remind me whenever I pointed out the imbalance. People respond to her charm. That's just as important as what you do behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. That phrase haunted me. It seemed to be my permanent position in both our business and our family. Things reached a new level of complication when Elena announced her engagement to Marcus Whitfield. The Whitfields weren't just any family, they were hospitality royalty. Marcus's father, Richard Whitfield, owned Whitfield Hospitality Group, controlling luxury hotels and event venues across the East Coast. For the past 4 years, Nonna's Table had held an exclusive catering contract with Whitfield Properties worth millions annually. I had personally negotiated the most recent renewal, securing terms that finally gave us the profit margins we deserved while expanding our reach into their high-end market. Isn't it wonderful? My mother gushed when Elena and Marcus announced their engagement at a family dinner in our private dining room. The two families coming together, like this. It's like a business marriage as well as a real one. I nodded and smiled while something uncomfortable settled in my stomach. I'd always found Marcus perfectly pleasant during our limited interactions at industry events, but there was something calculated about the way he looked at our family operations, as if we were a subsidiary he was evaluating. "We'll have to get you more involved in the social side of the business, Sophia," my mother said later that evening as we reviewed the quarterly reports. "Now that we'll be connected to the Whitfields, you can't keep hiding behind your spreadsheets. Maybe you'll even meet someone suitable." I was 26 and single, a fact my mother never failed to mention during any conversation lasting longer than 5 minutes. The implication was always clear. Despite my professional success, I was failing at what really mattered, finding a husband and starting a family. "I'm not hiding, Mom. I'm running 12 restaurants," I replied, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Someone has to make sure we stay profitable." "Well, with the Whitfield connection, maybe you won't have to work quite so hard," she said, patting my cheek like I was still 12 years old. Elena really did well for all of us. That night, as I drove back to my downtown apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was shifting in our family dynamics. I loved my sister despite her flaws and the unfair advantages she'd always enjoyed, but I also sensed that this engagement would change things in ways none of us could fully anticipate. What I didn't know then was just how right I would be and how completely unprepared I was for what would happen next. The 6 months leading up to Elena and Marcus's wedding were a masterclass in subtle degradation. What started as exciting family news quickly turned into a series of small humiliations that I tried desperately to ignore. It began with the engagement party at the Whitfield estate, a sprawling property in the Hamptons that made our family's successful restaurant empire look quaint by comparison. I arrived alone, wearing a navy blue cocktail dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, feeling reasonably confident until Marcus's mother, Victoria, looked me up and down and said, "Oh, how professional you look, dear." That evening, I was introduced repeatedly as Elena's sister who handles the business side, despite being the director of business development who had increased our revenue by 300% over 5 years. Each time I smiled and clarified my position, only to watch eyes glaze over before conversations quickly shifted to wedding plans or Whitfield's latest luxury property acquisition. During a momentary escape to the terrace for fresh air, I overheard a conversation that sent ice through my veins. "The Morettas have potential, but that small-scale mentality needs upgrading," Victoria was saying to someone. "Especially the younger sister. So focused on operations, poor thing. No sense of the larger hospitality picture." "We'll bring them up to standard," Elena replied with a laugh. "Marcus says their restaurant group has good bones. After the wedding, we can start making the necessary improvements." I slipped away before they could see me, telling myself they were just being elitist and that it didn't mean anything sinister. After all, our companies were partners. There was no reason for the Whitfields to want anything but success for Nana's table. As wedding preparations intensified, so did the red flags. When I offered to help Elena with planning, she politely declined, saying she had professionals handling everything. Yet she had no problem calling me at work with urgent questions about our family traditions or restaurant operations. "You mentioned some traditional dish Nana used to make for special occasions," she asked one afternoon, interrupting a crucial vendor negotiation. "Something with artichokes?" "Carciofi alla Judia," I answered. "We served it every Christmas until the kosher preparation became too time-intensive for the volume we needed." "Perfect. We're doing a heritage menu for the rehearsal dinner, and I needed those details." "Thanks, Sophia. You're so good with the little things." The little things, like our family history, our grandmother's recipes, the traditions that had shaped our entire business philosophy, all reduced to props for her perfect wedding narrative. Meanwhile, I was growing increasingly concerned about my father. He looked tired constantly, and I'd noticed him taking medication he quickly hid when I entered his office. When I asked about his health, he brushed me off. "Just getting old, Sophia. Nothing to worry about." But I did worry, especially when I caught him having hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I appeared. My mother, as usual, minimized my concerns. "Your father's fine. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any. Focus on being supportive for your sister's big day." The dress shopping incident was particularly telling. Although I wasn't asked to be in the bridal party. "We're keeping it small, just my closest friends," Elena explained. My mother insisted I join them to see Elena try on wedding dresses. I rearranged my schedule and met them at an exclusive bridal boutique in Manhattan, only to sit awkwardly on a velvet sofa while Elena's friends made thinly veiled comments about my work attire. "I just admire career women who don't have time to shop," one of them said, eyeing my sensible heels. "So brave to just not care about fashion." I caught Elena smirking in the mirror as she modeled a gown that probably cost more than my annual clothing budget. The final straw came when Elena started canceling our standing monthly sister dinners, a tradition we'd maintained even during our busiest restaurant expansion periods. First, she was swamped with venue planning. Then Marcus's family wanted to discuss catering details. Eventually, she stopped offering excuses altogether. When I finally managed to get her alone for lunch 2 months before the wedding, I tried to express my concerns. "I feel like things are changing between us, Elena," I said carefully. "And I'm worried about Dad." Have you noticed anything off with him lately? Elena sighed and checked her diamond-encrusted watch. You're overthinking things, Sophia. You always do. Dad's fine, and yes, things are changing. I'm getting married. That's what happens. It feels like more than that. The Whitfields, I'm not sure they respect what we've built with Nana's table. Her expression hardened. What's that supposed to mean? Just that I've overheard some comments that concern me. About improvements to our restaurants after the wedding. God, Sophia. She pushed her plate away. Are you really going to do this? Create drama because you're jealous? Jealous. I was genuinely stunned. Of what? You know what? That I found someone. That I'm happy. That for once, something good is happening for me instead of you being Dad's perfect little business protege. Her words hit like a physical blow. That's not fair. I've always supported you, even when what? Go ahead, say it. Her voice had taken on an edge I'd never heard before. You've always thought you deserved more credit, more control. Well, after the wedding, there are going to be some changes at Nana's table. The Whitfields have some ideas that will take us to the next level, and Dad agrees. She stood up, throwing cash on the table for her barely touched meal. Maybe it's time you figured out if you're really a team player, Sophia. Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're only happy when you're calling the shots. As I watched my sister walk away, I had the distinct feeling that I was losing her to people who saw our family business as nothing more than an acquisition target. What I didn't realize was how literal that loss would become, or that the engagement party I was dreading would be even worse than I'd imagined. The morning of Elena and Marcus's engagement party dawned clear and perfect, as if the weather itself had been arranged by the Whitfields. The event was to be held at their flagship hotel, the Grand Whitfield, a 5-star property overlooking Central Park that typically booked A-list celebrities and international dignitaries. I spent extra time getting ready, determined to look my best despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. My burgundy dress had been carefully selected to match the autumn theme without competing with Elena's ivory cocktail dress. I'd even splurged on professional hair and makeup, an indulgence that felt necessary given the inevitable comparisons I'd face. When I arrived at the venue 2 hours before the party as requested, I was immediately intercepted by Victoria Whitfield's event coordinator, a rail-thin woman with a clipboard and an earpiece who looked me up and down with clinical efficiency. Oh good, you're here. We need someone to coordinate with the catering staff. The wine selection needs adjusting, and there's been a mix-up with the appetizer timeline. I'm sorry, what? I'm not part of the event staff. I'm Elena's sister. She consulted her clipboard with a frown.
Right.
Sophia Moretti. Yes, Elena specifically said you're excellent with operational details and would be the point person for any last-minute issues. But I'm supposed to be getting ready with the family. The photographer will be starting the family portrait soon. The coordinator gave me a tight smile. The family photos were moved up. They finished those an hour ago. My stomach dropped. No one told me. I'm sure it was just an oversight. Now, about those wine pairings. I spent the next 2 hours solving problems that weren't mine to solve, missing the pre-party champagne toast, and the moment when my parents saw Elena in her engagement dress for the first time. By the time I managed to break away, guests were already arriving for the cocktail hour. There you are. My mother's voice was sharp with disapproval. Where have you been? We've been looking everywhere. No one was looking for me, I said quietly. I was handling catering issues because apparently that was my assigned role today. Don't be dramatic, Sophia. Now hurry, they're about to start the toasts. I was directed to a standing spot near the kitchen doors, far from where my parents stood with the Whitfields at the center of the room. As I positioned myself behind a pillar, I noticed Elena's college sorority sisters were seated at the family table where I should have been. When I caught Elena's eye during Marcus's toast, she gave me a small nod before turning her attention back to her fiancé, who was speaking eloquently about joining 2 great hospitality families. The cocktail reception was a networking paradise for everyone except me. I endured subtle digs from Whitfield relatives about everything from my career, how fascinating that you work in restaurant operations all day, to my single status, no date tonight? Well, career women often struggle with work-life balance. I plastered on a smile and reminded myself this was Elena's moment, not the time for confrontation. When we were finally called in for the seated dinner, I followed the crowd to find my assigned table. I checked 3 times, thinking there must be a mistake. My name wasn't listed on any of the elegantly calligraphed place cards in the main dining room. A waiter noticed my confusion. "Are you Sophia Moretti? I believe you're seated in the service corridor." The service corridor turned out to be exactly what it sounded like, a narrow hallway adjacent to the kitchen where the serving staff organized between courses. A small bistro table had been set up with my place card next to those of the event coordinator, the photographer's assistant, and the sommelier. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate humiliation. "Is something wrong?" Victoria Whitfield's voice came from behind me, saccharine sweet with an undercurrent of satisfaction. I turned slowly. I seemed to be seated in the service corridor. There must be a mistake. "Oh no, dear. We needed someone near the staff to keep things running smoothly. Elena thought you'd be perfect since you're so managerial." She patted my arm condescendingly. "We all have our roles to play, don't we? My role is as Elena's sister. Her only sister." "Yes, well." She glanced around conspiratorially before lowering her voice. "Between us, Elena was concerned you might feel uncomfortable at the family tables, being the only one without a partner. This way you can focus on what you do best, managing the details." I looked past her to where my sister sat at the head table, laughing with Marcus and his parents. My own parents were seated at the table directly adjacent, beaming with pride. "I'd like to speak with Elena. She's rather busy at the moment, being the guest of honor. I'm sure you understand the importance of keeping operations smooth. Your little restaurant chain does good work, but there's a natural order to these things, isn't there?" I felt heat rising in my face as the full implication sank in. In their eyes, I wasn't family. I was staff. The help. I made my way through the crowd to Elena during a brief moment when she was alone, adjusting her jewelry in a gilt mirror. "Elena, why am I seated in the service corridor?" She had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Sophia, don't start." The seating was complicated. Victoria had a system. "A system that puts your sister with the catering staff? How does that make sense?" She lowered her voice. "Look, Victoria's family is different from ours. Presentation matters to them. Just roll with it for one night, okay? For me, different how? Too good to treat your family with basic respect." "You're making a scene," she hissed. "This is my engagement party, and I'm about to marry into one of the most influential families in hospitality. And I'm your sister. Your only sister. Just handle it, Sophia. Like you handle everything else. I need to get back to my guests." As she walked away, I felt something shift inside me, a fundamental change in how I saw my sister and my place in this family. I stood alone, watching the celebration continue without me. When Richard Whitfield approached me near the bar, bourbon in hand, his words confirmed my worst fears. The sister," he said, looking me over with the same assessing gaze he probably used on properties he was considering purchasing. "Elena tells me you're quite the operations wizard. Don't worry, we'll find a place for you after we streamline that restaurant chain of yours. Every business needs someone to handle the back-of-house details, right?" I stared at him, the pieces suddenly clicking together. "Streamline our restaurants? What exactly does that mean, Mr. Whitfield?" He laughed, a sound like ice cubes clinking in expensive crystal. "Richard, please. We're family now. And you know how these things go. Synergy, optimization, modernization." He patted my shoulder. "Don't look so worried. We take care of our own." As he walked away, I felt eyes on me from across the room. Several guests had noticed our exchange, and the whispers had already begun. I could feel the weight of their curiosity and pity, the subtle satisfaction of those who enjoy watching someone else's humiliation. With as much dignity as I could muster, I collected my purse and coat and walked out of my sister's engagement party without saying goodbye to anyone. As I drove away from the Grand Whitfield, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Stop making this about you." 5 words that confirmed everything I needed to know about where I stood. 5 words that would change the course of our family forever. The week after Elena's engagement party passed in a blur of work and emotional numbness. I buried myself in vendor negotiations and financial projections, finding comfort in the certainty of numbers when everything else in my life felt unstable. At the office, I maintained a professional facade, but inside I was cycling through anger, hurt, and a growing sense of suspicion about what Richard Whitfield had meant by streamlining our restaurants. On Friday afternoon, as I was reviewing our quarterly statements, something caught my eye. A series of consulting fees to a company I didn't recognize, each payment just under $25,000, small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts, but substantial when viewed collectively. I spent the next 3 hours tracking the money, following a deliberately convoluted paper trail that eventually led to a consulting firm registered under Elena's name. Over the past year, nearly $800,000 had been diverted from Nana's Table's accounts to this entity, which had then paid various Whitfield properties for strategic consulting services. My hands were shaking as I printed the documentation. This wasn't just unethical, it was potentially criminal. And given the timing, it seemed clear this had been happening throughout Elena's relationship with Marcus. I found my father still working in his office, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. When I placed the financial records in front of him, I expected shock, denial, maybe even outrage. What I didn't expect was his resigned sigh. "I was wondering when you'd find this," he said quietly. "You knew." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. "Dad, this is embezzlement. Elena has been stealing from our restaurants." "It's not stealing when it's your own company, Sophia." His voice had a defensive edge. Elena needed capital to establish herself with the Whitfields, to show she was bringing value to the marriage. "So, you let her take company funds to impress her fiancé's family? Money we earned through contracts I negotiated. It's an investment in our future. The Whitfield connection is going to take Nana's Table to a level we never could have reached on our own." "By stealing from ourselves? That makes no sense." He rubbed his face wearily. "You wouldn't understand. You've always been about the bottom line, the contracts, the profit margins. Business is more than that. It's relationships, alliances. This merger with Whitfield Hospitality will secure our legacy." "Merger?" I interrupted. "What merger?" A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed his face. "We're still working out the details. Richard and I have been discussing combining operations for months. It makes sense, Sophia. They have the hotel properties, we have the restaurant expertise." "And when were you planning to tell me about this?" "I'm the director of business development. I should be involved in any merger discussions." We wanted to wait until after the wedding, make sure the families were united first. I felt sick. So the engagement wasn't just about Elena finding love. It was a business transaction. Don't be dramatic. It's a good match all around. Elena and Marcus are happy together, and this merger will secure our company's future. "What about my future, Dad? Where do I fit in this new merged company?" His eyes slid away from mine. "There would be adjustments. Consolidation of certain positions. You're talented, Sophia, but Richard feels strongly that his operations team should take the lead. You're planning to push me out." The realization was like ice water in my veins. My own family is plotting to remove me from the company I helped build. No one's pushing you out. There would still be a place for you, just perhaps not at the same level of authority. Richard feels you could benefit from learning their systems, their approach to hospitality management. I thought of Victoria Whitfield's smug face as she explained why I was seated in the service corridor. I thought of Richard's condescending pat on my shoulder as he talked about streamlining our restaurants. All the pieces were falling into place. Does Mom know about this? She supports whatever decisions will make this family stronger. I laughed bitterly. Stronger for whom? Not for me, clearly. Sophia, please. I gathered the documents I'd printed. I need some time to process this. But understand something. Dad, I will not be pushed aside in my own company without a fight. When I got home that night, I had 12 missed calls from Elena. She and Marcus had returned early from a weekend in the Hamptons, cutting their trip short for business reasons, according to her voicemail. I didn't call her back. Instead, I called Maria Santos, our restaurant group's accountant who had been with us since the second location opened. Maria had always been straightforward with me, even when the news wasn't good. "I need to meet with you," I said when she answered. "Tonight, if possible. And not at the office." 2 hours later, we sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop across town, away from anywhere my family or the Whitfields might frequent. "How long have you known about the merger plans?" I asked after laying out what I discovered. Maria looked uncomfortable. "Rumor started about 6 months ago. Your father asked me to prepare some preliminary valuations 4 months back, but he swore me to secrecy." "And the money Elena's been diverting?" "That started not long after she began dating Marcus. Small amounts at first, then larger. Your father authorized it all." "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked genuinely regretful. "Your father is still CEO, Sophia. He was clear that this was to be kept from you until after the wedding." "I'm sorry. I should have said something." "What else don't I know?" Maria hesitated. "The merger terms, they're not favorable to Nana's table. From what I've seen, Whitfield Hospitality would essentially absorb us. Your father would remain as a consultant for a transition period, but control would shift entirely to Richard Whitfield. And my position? Eliminated. The plan mentions a possible role in one of their hotel restaurants, but no real authority." I felt strangely calm as the full picture emerged. They're not just pushing me aside, they're dismantling everything we've built. "There's one more thing," Maria said reluctantly. "Your father's health, has he told you anything?" My stomach tightened. "No." "What do you know?" "I overheard him on the phone with his doctor last month. From what I could gather, it's serious. Heart problems, maybe worse. He was discussing treatment options, but it didn't sound good." The room seemed to tilt slightly. My father was sick, and he hadn't told me. Instead, he'd been planning to sell our company out from under me, securing Elena's future while sacrificing mine. "Thank you for your honesty, Maria," I said finally. "I need you to keep this conversation between us." "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but I need to see exactly what they've been planning." That night, I used my executive access to enter the office after hours. In my father's computer, protected by a password that had been our grandmother's maiden name for as long as I could remember, I found the draft merger documents. They were exactly as Maria had described, a complete takeover disguised as a merger of equals. Nana's table would cease to exist in all but name, becoming a subsidiary of Whitfield Hospitality. My father would receive a generous payout and a ceremonial consulting position. Elena would become regional director of restaurant operations with a salary twice what she currently made. And I would be offered a management position at one of their hotel restaurants with no guarantee of advancement and a salary cut of 40%. In my private office, with no one to witness, I finally broke down. Years of work, sacrifice, and dedication, all dismissed because I wasn't the golden child. Because I was the sister instead of the daughter-in-law. Because I had committed the sin of being competent rather than charming. As the tears subsided, I remembered something my business professor had told me during a particularly difficult semester. When emotion threatens to overwhelm you, return to strategy. Think not about how you feel, but about what you know and what leverage you have. I dried my eyes and began to review the catering contract I had negotiated with Whitfield Hospitality 8 months earlier. As I read through the clauses I had insisted on, a realization dawned slowly. In my thorough approach to protecting Nana's table, I had unknowingly created a shield against this very situation. There, in Section 12, subsection D, was a termination clause I had fought for. This agreement may be terminated with 30 days' notice by either party in the event of significant corporate restructuring, change in ownership, or merger activity, with such notice requiring only the signature of the CEO or designated operations officer of the respective organizations. I was the designated operations officer. I could cancel our contract with Whitfield Hospitality with my signature alone. And based on what I knew about their event schedule, they were completely dependent on our catering services for their upcoming high-season bookings. For the first time since the engagement party, I felt something other than despair. I had leverage. I had power, and I was finally ready to use it. I had been pushed around and underestimated by my family for years, but sitting in that office, looking at this contract clause I'd insisted on, I realized something important. Sometimes when people treat you like you're invisible, they forget you can see everything they're doing. On Monday morning, I contacted our family lawyer, Patricia Chun. We had worked closely together during various business expansions, and I trusted her discretion. When I laid out what I had discovered, she listened without interruption, taking meticulous notes. "Let me understand this clearly," she said when I finished. "Your father and sister have been planning a merger that would effectively dissolve your position, while simultaneously diverting company funds to invest in Whitfield projects, all without your knowledge as Director of Business Development." "That's correct. And now I need to know my options." Patricia reviewed the catering contract with Whitfield Hospitality carefully, paying special attention to the termination clause I had identified. "This is solid, Sophia. You do have the authority to terminate the contract independently. The question is whether that's the best strategic move." "What do you mean?" "Terminating the contract would certainly cause problems for Whitfield Hospitality, but it might also damage Nana's Table in the short term. We need to understand exactly how dependent each company is on the other." Over the next 2 days, I quietly gathered information, careful not to alert my father or sister to what I was doing. I discovered that Whitfield Properties had pre-booked catering services from us for over 200 events in the next 6 months, including several high-profile weddings and corporate functions. If we pulled out, they would be forced to find another catering company on short notice, likely at a much higher cost, if they could find anyone at all capable of handling their volume and standards. Meanwhile, while the Whitfield contract represented about 35% of our business, we had a diversified enough client base to survive its loss, especially if we could secure new contracts quickly. I also learned something else critical. My father's health was worse than even Maria had indicated. During a private conversation with his assistant, I discovered he had been given less than a year to live. The merger wasn't just about business. It was my father's attempt to secure our family's future before his death, and he had chosen to bet on Elena rather than me. The knowledge was devastating, but it also strengthened my resolve. I would not let my father's misplaced faith in my sister destroy everything we had built together. My next step was to reach out to key employees whose loyalty I needed to ensure. I had always treated our restaurant teams with respect, fighting for their raises and benefits when my father and Elena thought such investments unnecessary. Now I needed to know who would stand with me if things became difficult. Carlos Rivera, our executive chef across all locations, was blunt when I approached him privately. "I've been waiting for someone to notice what's been happening. Count me in, whatever you need. Half the kitchen staff knows something's wrong. They just don't know what." Jennifer Walsh, our director of marketing, was equally supportive. The Whitfields have been impossible to work with on the joint promotional campaigns. They treat us like we're some small-town operation instead of a respected restaurant group. "If you're planning to push back, I'm with you." By Wednesday, I had secured the quiet support of most of our management team and senior staff. I had also reached out to Pinnacle Event Planning, a luxury catering company that had been trying to partner with us for years, but had been rebuffed by my father due to his loyalty to the Whitfields. "We'd be very interested in discussing potential collaborations," Michael Pinnacle told me during our confidential meeting, "especially if certain exclusive arrangements were no longer in place." That evening, I was working late when Elena appeared in my office doorway. She looked radiant from her weekend getaway, but strangely tense. "You've been avoiding my calls," she said, closing the door behind her. "I've been busy. Running a restaurant group takes time." "We need to talk, Sophia. About the engagement party, about the future of Nana's Table." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "I'm listening." As Elena began explaining how the seating arrangement at the party had been a misunderstanding and how the planned merger with Whitfield Hospitality was a tremendous opportunity for everyone, I discreetly pressed record on my phone. New York was a one-party consent state for recordings, and I needed evidence of what I suspected was coming. "The thing is, Sophia," Elena continued, her tone becoming more candid as she relaxed, "the restaurant industry is changing. We need to evolve. Richard has connections, influence that we've never had access to. And what does that evolution look like for me? I asked, keeping my expression neutral. Elena hesitated, then seemingly decided honesty was the best approach. Look, the truth is there's some redundancy in the operations departments. Richard's team is top-notch, very sophisticated. So, I would be redundant. Not completely. We were thinking more of a management role at one of their hotel restaurants. Less corporate responsibility, more hands-on restaurant work. It would free you up to finally have a personal life. She attempted a smile. Maybe meet someone, start a family. Isn't that what you want? What I want, I said carefully, is to be respected for the work I've done building this company. To have my position and contributions acknowledged, not dismissed. Nobody's dismissing anything, Sophia. But sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good. Dad's not going to be around forever, you know. So, he's told you about his condition? Elena's surprise was genuine. What condition? How did you know about? I make it my business to know things that affect this company. Just like I know about the $800,000 you've diverted to pay Whitfield Properties for consulting fees. Her face hardened. That was a strategic investment approved by Dad. And it's none of your business. I'm the director of business development. Financial matters are exactly my business. For now, she said, the mask of sisterly concern slipping completely. But after the merger, things will change. Richard and Dad have already agreed. It's happening, Sophia. You can either get on board and accept a role that fits your capabilities, or you can make this difficult and end up with nothing. I see. And when did my sister become someone who threatens her sister with nothing if she doesn't comply? I'm being realistic. The Whitfields are powerful, Sophia. More powerful than you realize. This merger is happening with or without your approval. We'll see about that. As Elena left my office, her parting words confirmed everything. Don't fight this, Sophia. For once in your life, accept that someone else knows better than you. We're trying to ease you out gracefully. Don't make us do it the hard way. The next day, I received an invitation to dinner at the Whitfield estate on Saturday evening. The email from Victoria Whitfield was sweetly worded but clear in its intent. We're so looking forward to discussing the exciting future of our united families and businesses. Richard has some wonderful ideas to share. I accepted the invitation with equal politeness, knowing it would be my opportunity to assess just how much the Whitfields knew about their own vulnerability. In the meantime, I continued my preparations. I secured backup copies of all company files, records, and communications. I documented Elena's financial misconduct in meticulous detail. I documented Elena's financial misconduct in meticulous detail. I drafted the formal contract termination notice for Whitfield Hospitality, keeping it secured in my private safe. And I scheduled a series of meetings with board members who had previously been loyal to my father, presenting them with carefully selected information that raised questions about the merger's true financial impact on our restaurants. Throughout this process, I was conscious of a growing sense of guilt. Despite everything, these were my family members I was moving against. My father was dying. My sister, for all her flaws, was still my sister. Was I really prepared to potentially destroy our relationship permanently? Then I remembered being seated in the service corridor at my sister's engagement party, treated as staff rather than family. I remembered Richard Whitfield's condescending promise to streamline our restaurants. I remembered my father and sister planning to push me out of the business I had helped build without even the courtesy of advance notice. Family loyalty went both ways, and they had been the first to break it. On Saturday morning, I made one final attempt. I called Elena and asked to meet her alone before the dinner at the Whitfields. If there's anything you want to tell me, any explanation that might make sense of all this, I'm willing to listen, I offered. There's nothing to explain, Sophia. This is business. It's not personal. It became personal when I was seated in the service corridor at your engagement party. There was a long pause. That was Victoria's decision. She thought you'd be more comfortable there, away from all the couples. And you let her do it. You let her humiliate your sister, and you did nothing. I can't control everything, Sophia. Sometimes we have to compromise. No, Elena. What you did wasn't compromise. It was betrayal. And if that's how you treat family, then maybe business is all we have left. She sighed. Just come to dinner tonight. Hear what Richard has to say. Please, for Dad's sake if not for mine. I agreed, knowing it would be the last opportunity to turn back before I set my plan in motion. But as I hung up, I knew in my heart that the decision had already been made, not by me, but by them, long before I ever discovered their scheme. That evening, as I dressed for dinner at the Whitfields, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked calm, determined, even a little dangerous. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to choose self-preservation over family harmony, to value my own worth above others' expectations. No more service corridors, I promised my reflection. Never again. The morning of the Whitfield Hospitality Group's annual gala dawned bright and clear. The irony wasn't lost on me that the weather seemed to favor momentous occasions involving the Whitfield family. This particular event had been planned for months, a lavish celebration of their hotel empire's expansion, featuring a showcase of their culinary partnerships to potential investors and high-end clients. Nana's Table was featured prominently in all the marketing materials as their exclusive catering partner, with our signature dishes highlighted throughout the evening's menu. I arrived at my office at 6 a.m., 3 hours before our normal opening time. The termination notice I had prepared sat in a sealed envelope on my desk. After one final review with Patricia, I signed my name with a steady hand. There was no going back now. At 7:30, I placed the formal contract termination letter on Richard Whitfield's desk at Whitfield Hospitality headquarters. His assistant hadn't arrived yet, and security knew me well enough from our catering deliveries to let me through without question. I left a similar copy for their legal department. By 8 a.m., I had called an emergency board meeting at Nana's Table for 9 o'clock. As Director of Business Development, I had the authority to call such meetings for urgent financial matters, and this certainly qualified. At 8:45, my father arrived at the office looking confused when he saw the management team already gathering in our conference room. Sophia, what's going on? Why is there a board meeting today? You know how important tonight's gala is. There's an urgent matter we need to discuss, Dad. I've uncovered some financial irregularities that require immediate attention. His face paled slightly. This could have waited until after the Whitfield event. You know how crucial tonight is for our partnership. This can't wait. Trust me. By 9 o'clock, the conference room was filled with our management team and board members. My father sat at the head of the table, with empty chairs beside him where Elena would normally sit. I remained standing, ready to present. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I began. I've called this meeting because I've discovered activities that threaten the financial stability and integrity of Nana's Table. I distributed folders containing key documents I had prepared, financial records showing Elena's diversion of funds, draft merger documents that would effectively dissolve our company's independence, and projections showing how the merger would negatively impact most people in the room. As you can see, over the past year, approximately $800,000 has been diverted from our operating accounts to fund private consulting fees paid to Whitfield Properties. This was done without proper disclosure to the board or to me as Director of Business Development. Murmurs rippled through the room. My father's face had gone from pale to ashen. Additionally, I've discovered plans for a merger with Whitfield Hospitality that would effectively end Nana's Table as we know it. Most of the people in this room would be replaced by Whitfield executives. Our restaurants, which we've all worked to build, would become nothing more than subsidiaries with no real autonomy. Sophia, that's enough. My father's voice cracked with strain. These are sensitive negotiations that weren't ready for board review. Negotiations that completely circumvented proper financial oversight and board approval processes, I countered. As Director of Business Development, it's my responsibility to bring these irregularities to the board's attention. One of our longest-serving board members, Dr. Elena Rossi, no relation to my sister, spoke up. Antonio, is this true? Has money been diverted without board approval? Before my father could answer, The conference room door burst open and Elena stormed in, her face flushed with anger. What the hell is this, Sophia? The Whitfield gala starts in 8 hours, and you call an emergency meeting. I'm presenting evidence of financial misconduct to the board, Elena. Your financial misconduct, specifically. This is ridiculous, she sputtered, looking to our father for support. Dad, tell them this is all authorized. My father looked torn, his eyes moving between his daughter and the board members who were waiting for his response. The consulting fees to Whitfield Properties were strategic, he said finally. Perhaps not properly documented, but with my approval. And the merger plans? Dr. Rossi pressed. Plans that were deliberately hidden from me and from this board, I said firmly. And this morning, I took action to protect our company. I held up a copy of the termination notice. As of today, Nana's Table has terminated its exclusive catering contract with Whitfield Hospitality, effective immediately with 30 days transition as specified in our agreement. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Elena lunged toward me, but Carlos Torres stepped between us. You can't do that. Elena shouted over Carlos's shoulder. You don't have the authority. Actually, she does, Patricia said, standing. Section 12, subsection D of the contract specifically grants termination authority to either the CEO or designated operations officer in the event of significant corporate restructuring or merger activity. Ms. Moretti is well within her rights. The commotion grew louder as everyone began talking at once. My father banged his hand on the table, calling for order. When the conference room door opened again, this time it was Marcus, followed closely by Richard Whitfield. What is the meaning of this? Richard demanded, waving the termination notice. We have a gala tonight with 300 VIP guests expecting a full Nana's Table menu. Marcus went straight to Elena's side, his expression thunderous. Fix this, he hissed loud enough for everyone to hear. I told you your sister was a problem. You promised you had her under control. Everyone, please take your seats, I said calmly, refusing to be intimidated. Mr. Whitfield, since you're here, you might as well join us. We're discussing the unauthorized diversion of Nana's Table funds into your properties, as well as the secret merger negotiations that would effectively dismantle our restaurant group. There's nothing unauthorized about it, Richard blustered. Antonio and I have been planning this for months. Tell her, Antonio. All eyes turned to my father, who suddenly looked every bit his age and illness. The room fell silent as he struggled to find words. I was trying to secure the company's future, he finally said, his voice weak. With my health situation, I needed to make arrangements. By selling us out? Carlos asked incredulously. By letting your daughter embezzle funds? It wasn't embezzlement, Elena protested. It was investment in our future together. She turned to the board members. The Whitfield connection is our ticket to the next level, luxury hotels, high-end events, international expansion. At the cost of most of our jobs, Jennifer pointed out, holding up the merger document. Including yours, Elena. Did you even read this? You'd be a regional director in name only, with no real authority. Elena grabbed the document, scanning it with growing confusion. That's not what we discussed, she said, turning to Richard. You said I'd be running all restaurant operations. Richard waved dismissively. Details to be worked out. The important thing is the Nana's Table brand would continue. As nothing more than a trademark, I interjected. The real Nana's Table, the company our grandmother built, that all of us have contributed to, would cease to exist. This is outrageous. Richard snapped. We had an agreement, Antonio. An agreement made without proper authority, Dr. Rossi said firmly. As board chairperson, I can tell you no such merger was ever brought to this board for approval. Marcus, who had been watching with growing alarm, suddenly turned on Elena. You said this was handled. You said your sister wouldn't be a problem. His voice rose with each word. Do you have any idea how this looks? Our investors, our board members, they're expecting a seamless partnership showcase tonight. Marcus, please. Elena tried to calm him. We can fix this. Fix it. He laughed bitterly. You can't even control your own family business. How are you going to fix anything? That's enough. My father's voice, though quiet, cut through the chaos. He looked directly at me for the first time since the meeting began. Sophia, why didn't you come to me with these concerns before taking such drastic action? I did, Dad.
Last week. You dismissed me.
You told me my role would be reduced to managing a hotel restaurant after the merger, that I should accept it gracefully. He had the grace to look ashamed. I was trying to protect you, to give you an easier path. By taking away everything I've worked for? That's not protection, that's betrayal. The room fell silent again. In that moment, with everyone watching, my father seemed to truly see me for perhaps the first time, not as his daughter who needed guidance, but as a capable executive who had been wronged. The service corridor, he said quietly. At the engagement party. Was that true? Yes, I confirmed, meeting his gaze steadily. They seated me at a table in the service corridor with the event staff. Elena knew and did nothing. My father turned to Elena, shock evident on his face. Is this true? Elena squirmed under his scrutiny. It wasn't my decision. Victoria handled the seating arrangements. And you allowed it? Your sister, seated with the kitchen staff. It wasn't a big deal, Dad. Sophia's making it sound worse than it was. My father stood slowly, his face hardening with a resolve I hadn't seen in years. Mr. Whitfield, I believe my daughter has made her position clear. Nana's table will not be merging with Whitfield Hospitality, nor will we be continuing our exclusive catering contract. You can't be serious, Richard sputtered. After everything we've discussed. Antonio, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For perhaps the first time in too long. He turned to the board. I move that we accept the Director of Business Development's decision to terminate our contract with Whitfield Hospitality, effective immediately as specified. I further move that we launch a full investigation into the financial irregularities presented today. Dr. Rossi nodded. I second the motion. All in favor? The vote was unanimous, with only Elena abstaining. This is not over, Richard threatened as security arrived to escort the Whitfields from the building. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I will bury this restaurant chain. I believe you'll be too busy explaining to your gala guests why tonight's menu needs to be completely redesigned, I replied calmly, and why your showcase partnership no longer exists. As they were let out, Marcus turned back to Elena with a look of pure disgust. Don't bother coming to the gala tonight. Or to our apartment. I married into what I thought was a successful restaurant dynasty, not a family of failures. In the aftermath of their departure, the conference room remained silent for a long moment. Then my father did something completely unexpected. He walked around the table to where I stood and embraced me. I'm sorry, Sophia, he whispered, his voice breaking. I've been so wrong about everything. As the board members filed out to give us privacy, I felt something shift in the room, a rebalancing of power, yes, but also perhaps the first step toward healing a family that had been broken in ways I hadn't fully understood until now. Elena remained seated, shell-shocked by the rapid unraveling of everything she'd counted on. When we were alone, just father, elder daughter, and younger daughter, she finally spoke. What happens now? It was a good question, one I wasn't entirely sure how to answer. The 48 hours following what restaurant employees quickly dubbed the Whitfield confrontation were among the most intense of my professional life. News of the terminated contract spread through the hospitality industry like wildfire, with Whitfield Hospitality Group stock dropping 12% by market close the same day. Their gala was hastily converted into a vision presentation, but investors weren't fooled. Without their marquee catering partnership, their expansion timeline projections were meaningless. Meanwhile, I worked around the clock with our team to stabilize Nana's table. We contacted clients, reassured vendors, and began accelerated negotiations with Pinnacle Event Planning to fill the gap left by the Whitfield contracts. Michael Pinnacle, true to his word, moved quickly to formalize our partnership on terms that were remarkably favorable to us. I've waited years for the opportunity to work with Nana's table, he told me during our signing meeting. And frankly, I've always thought you were the real talent behind the operation. On the third morning, as I arrived at the office before dawn, as had become my habit, I found my mother waiting in my office. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her normally perfect appearance disheveled in a way I'd never seen before. "How could you do this?" she demanded without preamble. "Your father's health has deteriorated dramatically. The doctor says the stress may have taken months off what little time he has left." The accusation hit hard, exactly as she'd intended. "I'm sorry about Dad's health, truly. But I didn't create this situation. You publicly humiliated our family. You destroyed Elena's engagement. You threw away a partnership that would have secured all our futures. A partnership that would have eliminated my position and eventually absorbed our restaurants. They were using us, Mom. Using Elena." She shook her head in disgust. "I always knew you were ambitious, Sophia, but I never thought you'd put business ahead of family. That's rich, coming from you. Where was your concern for family when they seated me in the service corridor at Elena's engagement party? When did you stand up for me then?" A flicker of discomfort crossed her face. "That was unfortunate, but hardly worth this level of retaliation. It wasn't just the party. It was years of being treated as less than, of having my contributions minimized, of watching Elena get credit for my work. So this is about jealousy."
No, Mom.
"This is about justice. About finally saying enough is enough." She stood to leave. "Well, I hope your justice keeps you warm at night. I've moved out of the house to stay with Elena. Your father can deal with the fallout of your actions on his own, since he's chosen to support you in this madness." After she left, I sat alone in my office, wrestling with doubt for the first time since I'd set my plan in motion. Had I gone too far? Was my mother right that I'd prioritized the company over my family's well-being? I didn't have long to dwell on these questions. My assistant interrupted with urgent news. Anonymous threats had been made against Nana's table, and someone had attempted to access our secure financial systems overnight. The next few weeks brought a steady stream of challenges. Several employees loyal to Elena resigned. Vendors with Whitfield connections suddenly became unavailable for our events. Anonymous tips about Nana's table's financial irregularities were sent to regulatory agencies, triggering audits that consumed valuable time and resources. Through it all, I maintained a calm exterior at work while privately dealing with the emotional toll of family fracture. My father, against doctors' recommendations, came to the office daily, though often for just a few hours. His silent support strengthened my resolve even as his physical decline became increasingly apparent. Elena had effectively disappeared from restaurant operations. According to office rumors, she had moved into a hotel after Marcus broke off their engagement, citing irreconcilable differences in family business practices. I made no attempt to contact her, unsure what I could possibly say that would make any difference now. 6 weeks after the confrontation, an unmarked envelope appeared on my desk. Inside was a flash drive containing emails between Richard and Marcus Whitfield dating back to when Marcus first met Elena. The correspondence made clear that their relationship had been strategically initiated with the specific goal of facilitating a takeover of Nana's table. Target acquired, Marcus had written after their third date. She's exactly as described, eager to please, easily impressed by luxury, and desperate for approval. This will be easier than we thought. Later emails discussed their growing concern about my role in the company. The sister continues to be an obstacle, Richard wrote. She questions everything, keeps pushing for contract terms that protect their restaurants. Marcus assures me he can handle her through Elena, but I'm not convinced. Most damning was an email from just 2 days before the engagement party. Once the engagement is announced, we'll accelerate the timeline. Antonio's condition is deteriorating faster than expected. We need to get the merger documents signed while he's still capable. The sister will be offered a hotel position to save face, but make no mistake, she'll be gone within 6 months. I couldn't determine who had sent me these emails, though I suspected it might have been someone from Whitfield Hospitality with an attack of conscience. Whatever the source, they confirmed that everything I had feared was true. The Whitfields had targeted our family and our business with calculated precision. That evening, I received an unexpected call from my father, asking me to come to the house. When I arrived, I found him alone, sitting in his study surrounded by family photos and restaurant awards. "Your mother's not here," he said as I hesitated in the doorway. "She's still staying with Elena." "How are you feeling?" I asked, noticing the new oxygen concentrator beside his chair. "Like a fool," he replied with a sad smile. "Sit down, Sophia. Please." I took the chair across from him, the same spot where I'd sat countless times growing up whenever he wanted to discuss something important. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about the company, about our family, about the choices I've made." "Dad, you don't have to." He held up a hand to stop me. "I do. I've been unfair to you for years, Sophia.
I see that now.
I allowed my old-fashioned ideas about family business to blind me to what was right in front of my face, that you were the one who truly understood and cared for what I built." His candor caught me off guard. My father had never been one for emotional conversations or admitting mistakes. "Why Elena?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years finally finding voice. Why was it always her, even when I was clearly more committed, more capable? He sighed deeply. "Because she reminded me of your mother when we first met. All charm and dreams, not much substance. I fell for that kind of person once, and I thought I was protecting Elena by never challenging her to be more."
He reached for my hand.
"The irony is, you're actually more like me than Elena ever was. The real me, not the one I pretend to be in client meetings. You have the same drive, the same attention to detail, the same refusal to accept less than what you deserve." Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. "I never wanted to hurt you, Dad. Or the company. I just couldn't let them take everything we built. I know that now. And I'm proud of you, Sophia. I should have said that more often over the years." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words and lost time hanging between us. "There's something else," he said finally. "I've changed my will and the company's succession plan. Nana's table will go to you upon my death. Elena will retain her ownership shares, but operational control and majority voting rights will be yours." "Dad." "It's already done. The lawyers finalized it yesterday." Before I could respond, the front door slammed and Elena's voice called out, "Dad, are you here? We need to talk." She appeared in the study doorway, stopping short when she saw me. She looked terrible, unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes bloodshot. "What's she doing here?" she demanded. "I asked her to come," our father replied calmly. "And I'm glad you're here too. We need to talk, all of us, about what happens next. About how she destroyed my engagement, got me thrown out of my own life, made me a laughingstock in the industry. Marcus was using you as part of his father's plan to take over our restaurants," I said, sliding a printout of the emails across the coffee table. "Read these, then tell me I'm the one who destroyed your relationship." Elena snatched the papers, her expression shifting from anger to disbelief as she read. "This can't be real," she muttered. "He wouldn't," he said. "He loved me." He was following a script, our father confirmed gently. "They used you, Elena. Used all of us." Elena sank onto the couch, the fight draining out of her. "The prenup, there were clauses about family business conduct. His lawyers are saying I breached contract by not delivering the merger. They want me to pay back the engagement ring, the wedding deposits." "That won't happen," I assured her. "Those financial transfers weren't authorized by the board. We can prove that in court if necessary." She looked up at me, her expression a mix of resentment and grudging respect. "You really did think of everything, didn't you?" "Not everything. I never wanted it to come to this, to hurt you or Dad or the company. Yet here we are." She stood abruptly. "I need some air." After she left, my father and I sat in silence again. Finally, he spoke. "She'll come around eventually, when the hurt and humiliation fade." I wasn't so sure, but I nodded anyway, unwilling to cause my father more pain. As I prepared to leave, he caught my hand once more. "Whatever happens with Elena, with your mother, with the company, know that I'm sorry, Sophia. For all of it. And I'm so very proud of the woman you've become, even if I had very little to do with it." Driving home that night, I felt the first tentative threads of reconciliation with my father, even as the gulf between my sister and me seemed wider than ever. The company was stable, our partnership with Pinnacle Event Planning was thriving, and I had finally earned the recognition I'd sought for so long. Yet the victory felt hollow, tinged with the loss of family harmony and the knowledge that my father's remaining time was short. I had won the battle for Nana's table, but the cost to our family remained to be fully calculated. What I didn't know then was that the most unexpected developments were still to come, from the direction I least anticipated. 3 months after the boardroom confrontation, I arrived at my office to find a young man waiting outside my door. He stood as I approached, extending his hand with a nervous smile. "Ms. Moretti? I'm David Whitfield, Marcus's younger brother. I was hoping I could have a few minutes of your time." I tensed immediately, wary of another Whitfield manipulation. "How did you get in here?" "Your assistant let me through." I told her it was important. He gestured to the chair beside him. "I only need 5 minutes, please." Against my better judgment, I unlocked my office and motioned him inside. David Whitfield was nothing like his father or brother. Where they projected calculated confidence, he seemed genuinely uncertain, fidgeting with his watch as he took a seat. "I'll be direct," he said. "Whitfield Hospitality is in serious trouble. More trouble than anyone outside the family realizes. And you deserve to know. The attempted takeover of Nana's table wasn't just about expansion. It was about survival. And you're telling me this because? Because I'm tired of the way my family operates. I've spent my entire life watching my father and brother manipulate and use people. I was supposed to be part of the family business, but they've always kept me on the periphery because I questioned their methods. So, this is revenge? No, it's conscience." He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and placed it on my desk. "This contains internal Whitfield Hospitality financial projections, loan documents, and partnership agreements. You'll see they're headed for bankruptcy within 4 months unless they find another restaurant partner willing to work at below-market rates." I made no move to touch the drive. Why should I believe anything from a Whitfield? Because unlike my father and brother, I don't have anything to gain by lying to you. I'm the family disappointment, the one who studied sustainable hospitality instead of acquisitions, who questions the ethics of our business practices, who thinks maybe success shouldn't always come at other people's expense. There was something genuine in his frustration that made me reconsider my initial judgment. Let's say I believe you. What do you expect me to do with this information? Nothing. Use it, ignore it, that's your choice. I just thought you should have all the facts. He stood to leave. For what it's worth, I was disgusted when I heard about the engagement party seating. That was Marcus's idea, but my father approved it. They thought humiliating you would make you more likely to accept a diminished role after the merger. As he reached the door, curiosity got the better of me. "David, why did you really come here today?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. "Because I saw someone finally stand up to my family and win. That's not something I've witnessed before. It made me think maybe things could be different." After he left, I had the flash drive contents verified by our IT team before reviewing them. Everything David had said was true. Whitfield Hospitality was in dire financial straits, with Richard Whitfield having over-leveraged company assets for personal investments that had performed poorly. The attempted takeover of Nana's table had indeed been a desperate survival move rather than simple expansion. I was still processing this information when my assistant interrupted with urgent news. My father had been rushed to the hospital after collapsing at home. By the time I arrived at the hospital, my mother and Elena were already there, standing tensely on opposite sides of the waiting room. Neither acknowledged me as I entered, but the doctor's arrival forced a temporary truce. "Mr. Moretti has had a significant cardiac event," the doctor explained gently. "The combination of his underlying condition and recent stress has accelerated his decline. He's stabilized for now, but I need to be clear, we're talking about weeks rather than months at this point." My mother broke down in tears while Elena turned away, her shoulders rigid with emotion. I thanked the doctor and asked when we could see him. "He's asking for all of you together." The three of us entered my father's hospital room in uncomfortable silence. He looked so diminished in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and tubes, that my chest physically ached at the sight. Finally, he said weakly, attempting a smile. My whole family in one room again. My mother rushed to his side, taking his hand and smoothing his hair with a tenderness I hadn't witnessed in years. Elena hung back near the door while I moved to the opposite side of the bed. No more fighting, my father said, his voice barely above a whisper. Life's too short. I should know. Antonio, don't talk like that, my mother scolded gently. You need to save your strength. For what, Isabella? So I can pretend a little longer that our family isn't broken? He looked at each of us in turn. I don't have time for pretense anymore. He turned to Elena first. Daughter, I failed you by making things too easy, by never challenging you to be more than charming. I thought I was being supportive, but I was actually holding you back. Elena looked stricken. Dad, you don't have to. Let me finish. I'm proud of you, but not for the reasons you think. Not for the deals or the connections. I'm proud of how you care for people, how you remember every server's birthday, how you visited Mrs. Chen every week after she retired until the day she passed. That's your real gift, not charm, but genuine care for others. I should have helped you build on that instead of pushing you into roles that never fit. He turned to me next. Sophia, I've already said much of what I needed to say to you, but your mother needs to hear it too. You saved our restaurants, not just from the Whitfields, but from my own poor decisions over the years. I've been taking credit for your achievements for too long. The truth is, Nana's table would have failed years ago without you. Finally, he looked at my mother. Isabella, I love you, but we both know you favored Elena from the day she was born. It's time to acknowledge what that has cost our younger daughter, and what it's cost Elena too, by never requiring her best. My mother was openly crying now. Antonio, please. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time, he insisted. I'm not asking you all to pretend the hurt hasn't happened. I'm asking you to acknowledge it, and then decide if this family is worth saving, because I won't be here to hold it together anymore. The gravity of his words hung in the air, making the beep of monitors and hiss of oxygen seem unnaturally loud. I want your promise, he continued. All of you. Promise me you'll try. That's all I ask, just try to find a way forward together. What else could we do but nod and murmur our agreement? In that moment, with my father so clearly slipping away, any other response was unthinkable. As visiting hours ended and we prepared to leave, an unexpected visitor arrived. Giuseppe Reyes, my father's oldest friend and mentor, the man who had given him his first restaurant job 40 years ago. I came as soon as I heard, Giuseppe said, embracing each of us briefly before taking my father's hand. You always did have a flair for drama, Antonio. My father actually laughed, a sound so welcome it brought fresh tears to my eyes. Bad timing as usual, Giuseppe. They're kicking everyone out, but I've got connections with a night nurse. I'll stay a while. He looked meaningfully at the three of us. You all look terrible. Go home, get some rest. I'll keep this old troublemaker company. In the hospital parking lot, an awkward silence descended as we stood by our respective cars. I'm staying at the house tonight, my mother announced, not quite meeting my eyes. In case the hospital calls. I'll come too, Elena said after a moment's hesitation. They both looked at me expectantly. I'll stop by in the morning, I said, knowing we all needed space to process what had happened. Call me if anything changes overnight. When I arrived home, I found another surprise visitor waiting in my lobby, David Whitfield again, looking even more anxious than during our morning meeting. I heard about your father, he said. I'm so sorry, but there's something else you need to know. My father is planning to file suit against Nana's table tomorrow. He's claiming breach of contract, fraud, a whole list of things. It's baseless, but he's desperate and determined to cause damage. How do you know this? I overheard him on the phone with his lawyers. He's liquidating personal assets to fund the legal battle. David hesitated. There's more. Your sister called my brother tonight. That was unexpected. Elena called Marcus?
Yes.
She was emotional, said some things about your father's condition. Marcus immediately called our father. They're accelerating their plans, trying to take advantage of your family crisis. I felt a surge of anger, not just at the Whitfields, but at Elena as well. Even now, she couldn't see how she was being used. Thank you for telling me, I said. But why are you helping us? You're putting yourself at risk. David looked down, seeming to struggle with his answer. For my whole life, I've watched my father and brother destroy people to get what they want. I've stayed quiet, told myself it wasn't my business. But what they did to your family, what they're still trying to do, I can't be silent anymore. I studied him carefully, looking for any sign of deception but finding only genuine discomfort. What do you want in return? Nothing. He met my gaze directly. Maybe just the chance to work somewhere that doesn't require selling your soul as a job requirement. The next morning, I arrived at my parents' house early, finding Elena alone in the kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee. Mom's getting dressed, she said without looking up. Hospital called. Dad had a rough night. I poured myself coffee, leaning against the counter instead of sitting. I poured myself coffee, leaning against the counter instead of sitting. I heard you called Marcus last night. Her head snapped up. How did you? She stopped herself. It doesn't matter. What matters is that within minutes of your call, Richard Whitfield was on the phone with his lawyers, planning to file suit against us today. They're using Dad's condition to their advantage. Elena stared at me, then set her cup down hard enough to slosh coffee onto the table. I didn't tell him anything about the company. I needed to talk to someone who understood what it was like to lose a parent. And you didn't think he would use anything you said against us? After everything we now know? He was my fiancé, Sophia. For 6 months, I thought I was going to spend my life with him. Her voice cracked on the last word. I loved him.
Or I thought I did.
I don't know what was real anymore. Despite everything, I felt a flash of sympathy. Elena had been manipulated expertly by people who'd identified her every vulnerability and exploited them ruthlessly. None of it was real for him, I said, gentler now. The emails make that clear. But your feelings were real. You're allowed to grieve that. She looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. How are you not completely falling apart? Dad's dying, the company's under attack, our family's in shambles. Yet here you are, still functioning, still 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Trust me, I'm barely holding it together, I admitted. I'm just good at compartmentalizing. Like at the engagement party, she said suddenly. When they put you at that table in the service corridor, you just handled it. Walked out with your head high. I saw you leave, you know. I told myself you were overreacting, being dramatic. But the truth is, I was embarrassed. Not by you, by myself, for letting it happen. It was perhaps the most honest thing my sister had ever said to me. Before I could respond, my mother appeared in the doorway, dressed impeccably as always despite the circumstances.
We should go, she said.
The doctor wants to speak with all of us. At the hospital, we received the news we'd been dreading. My father had taken a significant turn for the worse overnight. The doctor spoke of making him comfortable and saying goodbyes in the gentle euphemisms of imminent loss. In my father's room, Giuseppe was still there, looking as though he hadn't left since the previous evening. He stood when we entered, embracing my mother with surprising tenderness. I'll give you all some privacy, he said. No. My father's voice was weaker than yesterday, but still commanding. Stay, Giuseppe. Your family, too. Giuseppe resumed his seat as we gathered around the bed. My father's breathing was labored, but his mind was clear as he looked at each of us in turn. I don't have much time, he began, so listen carefully. Nana's table is more than a company. It's my legacy. But a legacy is worthless if there's no one to carry it forward.
He reached for my hand.
Sophia, you have the vision and the strength to lead, but remember that success means nothing without people to share it with. To Elena, he said, Daughter, you have a gift for connecting with people that your sister and I lack. Don't waste it trying to be something you're not. Find your own path, even if it's not the one I imagined for you. Finally, to my mother. Isabella, these are your children. Both of them. When I'm gone, they'll need you to be stronger than you've ever been, to love them equally even when it's difficult. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. One last thing. There's a letter in my desk at home, bottom right drawer. Read it together. Promise me. We all nodded, too emotional for words. For the next few hours, we sat with him as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Giuseppe shared stories of my father's early days in the restaurant business, making us laugh despite our grief with tales of spectacular mistakes and hard-won lessons. At one point, when my mother and Giuseppe had stepped out briefly and Elena had gone for coffee, my father beckoned me closer. The Whitfields, he whispered. Be careful. Richard plays the long game. I know, Dad. We're prepared. He shook his head slightly. Not just legally. He'll try to divide you. Elena is vulnerable. Your mother, too. I'll protect them. I promised. And yourself. His fingers tightened weakly around mine. I'm so sorry, Sophia. For all the times I didn't see you. I know, Dad. It's okay. No, he insisted. It's not okay. But you're strong enough to forgive anyway. That's what makes you extraordinary. When Elena returned, my father asked for a moment alone with her. Through the glass window of the hospital room, I watched my sister break down sobbing as my father spoke to her with evident urgency. Whatever was said in those private moments seemed to transform something in Elena. She emerged from the room with red eyes, but a new resolve in her bearing. That evening, with the family gathered around his bed, Antonio Moretti took his final breath. The room fell silent except for my mother's quiet weeping and the machines that would soon be turned off. In the days that followed, we moved through the necessary rituals of death, the funeral arrangements, the obituary, the steady stream of visitors offering condolences. Richard Whitfield did indeed file his lawsuit, but it was temporarily overshadowed by the community's response to my father's passing. As a respected restaurateur who had employed hundreds of local residents over the decades, his funeral was attended by nearly 1,000 people. 3 days after the funeral, the three of us gathered in my father's study to read the letter he had mentioned. My mother sat in his chair, hands trembling slightly, as she opened the envelope. My dear family, she read aloud. If you're reading this, then I've moved on to whatever comes next. I've never been good at expressing my feelings, but perhaps in writing I can find the words that eluded me in life. Isabella, my love, for 38 years, you've been my constant, my inspiration. But in your desire to protect our elder daughter, you sometimes failed to see our younger daughter's worth. This wasn't fair to either of our children. Elena needed challenges, not protection. Sophia needed recognition, not endless expectations. I hope you can find balance now. Elena, my daughter, I've given you many things, but perhaps the greatest disservice was never requiring you to earn them. The ease with which opportunities have come to you has prevented you from discovering your true potential. It's not too late. Find something you truly care about and pour yourself into it, not for my approval or anyone else's, but for your own satisfaction. Sophia, my daughter, you've always had to work twice as hard for half the recognition, and that burden falls squarely on my shoulders. Yet you've excelled despite this unfairness. Your intelligence, determination, and integrity have built Nana's table into what it is today. Trust these qualities in yourself, but remember that vulnerability is not weakness, it's human. As for the company, it will face challenges in my absence. The Whitfields will not give up easily. Stand together. Remember that while business is important, family is irreplaceable. Find a way forward that honors both. I leave you with this final thought. Forgiveness is not about forgetting wrongs or pretending hurts didn't happen. It's about choosing to move forward unburdened by the past. Forgive each other, forgive yourselves, and perhaps, when you're ready, forgive even those who sought to harm you. Not for their sake, but for your own peace. With all my love, Antonio. We sat in silence when my mother finished reading, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Elena spoke. I'm moving back to the house for a while, if that's okay, Mom. I need to figure some things out. My mother nodded. Of course. This is your home, too. Elena turned to me. And I want to come back to the company. Not as VP, I didn't earn that. But I'd like to start over, find where I can actually contribute. I studied my sister, seeing genuine humility in her expression for perhaps the first time. We could use help with community relations. Not the flashy events, but the real relationship building, working with local suppliers, maintaining connections with long-time customers, making sure our staff feel valued. I'd like that, she said quietly. My mother cleared her throat. Sophia, I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. I've been unfair to you for a very long time. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Your father was right. I favored Elena, made excuses for her while holding you to impossible standards. I was wrong. She straightened her shoulders. But I'd like the chance to do better if you'll let me. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There were too many years of hurt for that. But it was a beginning, a small opening that might, with care and time, widen into something like healing. The next day at the office, I received another visit from David Whitfield. This time, he came with a proposal. I've left Whitfield Hospitality, he announced. Officially resigned this morning. My father is furious, of course. Sees it as the ultimate betrayal. What will you do now? I asked. That's actually why I'm here. I have a background in sustainable hospitality and event management. I was wondering if Nana's table might have a place for someone with those skills. The irony wasn't lost on me, hiring a Whitfield in the aftermath of their attempted takeover. But David had proven himself an ally when we needed one most. We're expanding our catering operations, I said after consideration. It's a growing market segment, and we could use someone with your expertise to help position us in the luxury event space. His face lit up. Really? You'd consider it after everything my family's done? You're not your family, David. You've made that very clear. I extended my hand. Send me your resume and we'll make it official. As he left, I felt a strange sense of things coming full circle. The Whitfields had tried to infiltrate our company through Elena. Now we were welcoming a Whitfield who had rejected his family's methods. There was a certain poetic justice in it. The lawsuit Richard Whitfield filed was eventually dismissed, though not before draining considerable resources on both sides. Whitfield Hospitality did indeed face bankruptcy within 4 months, as David had predicted. Richard was forced to sell majority control to investors who immediately replaced him as CEO. Marcus, having lost both his engagement and his position at his father's company, moved to the West Coast to explore new opportunities, according to industry gossip. As for Nana's table, we not only survived but thrived. Our partnership with Pinnacle Event Planning opened doors to larger, more prestigious events than we'd ever handled before. Our reputation for ethical business practices and exceptional food spread, bringing new clients eager to work with a company that stood by its principles. Elena found her niche in community relations, where her natural empathy and interpersonal skills made her genuinely valuable. Without the pressure to be something she wasn't, she discovered abilities she hadn't known she possessed. My mother began taking a more active interest in the company's charitable foundation, channeling her energy into community projects that honored my father's legacy. And I learned that leading didn't always mean carrying every burden alone, that trusting others, even those who had hurt me in the past, could sometimes yield unexpected rewards. 1 year after my father's death, as we gathered for a private memorial dinner, I realized that while the wounds weren't fully healed, they had begun to close. Not because we had forgotten the hurts, but because we had chosen to move forward despite them, just as my father had hoped we would. 1 year to the day after my father's passing, Nana's Table hosted the Antonio Moretti Memorial Scholarship Dinner, an event to raise funds for young people entering the culinary arts. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel was filled with industry leaders, community members, and employees past and present, all gathered to honor the man who had built more than just restaurants. I stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd, feeling a complex mix of grief and pride. My father believed that success meant nothing if not shared. I began. He built Nana's Table not just as a business, but as a family. Tonight, we extend that family by creating opportunities for the next generation of chefs and restaurateurs. From my vantage point, I could see my mother seated at our company's table, elegant as always but softer somehow. The rigid perfectionism that had defined her for so long had given way to a more authentic presence. Beside her sat Elena, who had spent the past year rebuilding herself with the same care and attention she now brought to our community relationships. The company we led together was stronger than ever. Nana's table had not only survived the Whitfield crisis, but emerged with a clearer identity and purpose. Our partnership with Pinnacle Event Planning had expanded our reach into new markets, and our focus on sustainable practices, spearheaded by David Whitfield, had positioned us at the forefront of the industry's evolution toward more ethical business practices. After my speech, as guests mingled during the reception, I found myself approached by an investment banker I recognized from previous industry events. "Ms. Moretti, congratulations on a wonderful evening," he said, extending his hand. "And on Nana's table's remarkable performance this past year. Your restaurant group has caught the attention of some very interested parties." "Thank you, Mr. Davidson. That's kind of you to say." "More than kind, it's factual. In fact, I'm here representing Coastal Hospitality. They've authorized me to discuss a potential acquisition offer. The numbers would be substantial." I smiled politely. "That's flattering, but Nana's table isn't for sale." "Everyone has a price, Ms. Moretti," he countered smoothly. "Perhaps we could discuss this in more detail over lunch next week?" Coastal is prepared to ensure the Moretti name continues, of course. They value your brand and legacy. The Moretti name isn't just a brand, Mr. Davidson. It's a promise to our employees, our customers, and our community. That's not something we're looking to sell at any price." As he excused himself, disappointment evident in his expression, Elena appeared at my side with 2 glasses of wine. "Let me guess," she said, handing me one. "Another acquisition offer?" "4th one this month." I took a sip, enjoying the momentary celebration. They really don't give up. Can't blame them. We're doing incredibly well. Her easy smile was reminiscent of the old Elena, but there was a new substance behind it now. "But they're wasting their time. This is a family business, and we're not for sale at any price." Speaking of family, I nodded toward the entrance where David Whitfield had just arrived, looking slightly uncomfortable in the formal setting. "I'm still getting used to seeing a Whitfield on our team." "He's earned his place," Elena acknowledged. "The Sustainable Dining Initiative has brought in 12 new corporate clients this quarter alone." We watched as our mother spotted David and, to my surprise, waved him over to join her table. The sight of Isabella Moretti willingly engaging with a Whitfield would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Mom's really changed," Elena remarked. "We all have," I replied. "For the better, I hope." "Definitely for the better. At least for me." She turned to face me directly. "I'm not sure I ever properly thanked you, Sophia." "For what?" "For stopping me from destroying everything. For giving me a second chance I definitely didn't deserve." Her voice grew serious. "For seeing who I could be instead of who I was." "That's what family does," I replied. Or what it should do, anyway. As the evening progressed, I circulated through the crowd, greeting clients and employees, accepting condolences and congratulations in equal measure. It was during a quiet moment by the memorial display of my father's photos that I encountered an unexpected face. A young woman in a server's uniform approached hesitantly. It took me a moment to recognize her. It was Sarah Chen, Mrs. Chen's granddaughter, who had worked briefly at one of our restaurants during college. "Ms. Moretti? I don't know if you remember me." "Sarah, of course.
How are you?"
"How's law school going?" She looked surprised that I remembered. "I graduated last month, actually. I'm working events to pay off loans while I study for the bar exam." She hesitated. "I just wanted to say thank you. The scholarship fund you set up paid for my last year of school. I don't think I could have finished without it." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "Your grandmother was special to this family. She worked for us for 15 years. She always said Mr. Moretti treated his employees like family, and that you were the one who made sure the health insurance covered her cancer treatments. Your grandmother earned every bit of care we could give her." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. I started a public defender's office next month. I want to help families like mine, immigrants who don't always know their rights. Your father and this company showed me that business could be about more than just profit. After she walked away, I stood quietly, thinking about the ripple effects of the choices we make. My father had built something that extended far beyond our family, creating opportunities and security for hundreds of people over the decades. Later that evening, as the event wound down, I found myself standing beside the large windows overlooking the city skyline. So much had changed in a year. The company was thriving under new leadership and direction. My relationship with Elena had evolved into something approaching a true partnership, each of us contributing our distinct strengths. Even my mother and I had reached a tentative peace, learning to appreciate each other's differences rather than fighting against them. Penny for your thoughts? David Whitfield joined me at the window, 2 coffee cups in hand. He offered one to me. Just reflecting, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. It's been quite a year. That's an understatement. He glanced back toward the room. I saw my brother earlier, by the way. Marcus was here? I was genuinely surprised. Briefly. He left when he saw me, but he looked different. Humbled, maybe. Word is he's working for a small hotel chain in Portland, actually doing hands-on management work for the first time in his life. And your father? Still in Arizona, from what I hear. The investors who bought the company gave him a consulting contract, but it's mostly ceremonial. He's learning what it's like to have his ideas dismissed by people who think they know better. David paused, then continued. You know, what happened to your family, the way they tried to manipulate and use you, it opened my eyes to things I'd been ignoring for years. I spent my whole life trying to earn my father's approval before I realized it wasn't worth having. The approval we seek from the wrong people often costs us the respect we should have for ourselves, I said. Exactly. Thank you for giving me the chance to start over here. Working for Nana's table has shown me what a business can be when it's built on actual values instead of just profit margins. As the event concluded, guests departing with handshakes and embraces, I found myself standing with my mother and sister at the memorial photo display. The 3 of us, so fractured a year ago, now stood side by side, a family still healing but intact. He would have loved tonight, my mother said softly, looking at a photo of my father from the early days of the restaurant. Seeing the company thriving, the family together, the scholarship helping young people follow their dreams. The scholarship was a good idea, Sophia, Elena added. Practical but meaningful. Very, Dad. We shared a moment of silence, each lost in our own memories of Antonio Moretti. I have something to show you both, I said finally. Come with me. I led them to the hotel's rooftop terrace, where the city spread out before us in a tapestry of lights. In the near distance, the distinctive shape of our newest project rose against the night sky, a culinary institute and community kitchen that combined professional training with programs for underserved neighborhoods. The Antonio Moretti Culinary Institute, I announced. Opening next fall. The first project completed under our new community partnership model. My mother pressed her hand to her mouth, eyes shining with tears. It's beautiful, Sophia. It's more than beautiful, Elena said. It's meaningful. Important. Exactly what Dad would have wanted his legacy to be. As we stood together, looking out at the physical manifestation of everything we'd fought for and nearly lost, I felt a sense of completion that had eluded me for most of my life. The service corridor incident at Elena's engagement party, an event that had once seemed like the ultimate humiliation, now appeared as merely the catalyst that had set necessary changes in motion. Nana's table wasn't just surviving, it was evolving into something better than before. Our family wasn't just coexisting, we were learning to truly see and value each other. And I wasn't just succeeding professionally, I was finding balance and meaning beyond the bottom line. The stand I had taken by terminating our contract hadn't been about punishment in the end. It had been about protection of our company, our employees, our family legacy, and yes, my own worth and position in the family I had helped build. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about making others pay. It's about refusing to accept less than you deserve. I think about that engagement party sometimes, The humiliation of being seated in the service corridor, the cold calculation behind it, the moment I decided I wouldn't allow myself or our company to be diminished. It changed everything. Have you ever experienced a moment that forced you to stand up for yourself in ways you never expected? Life teaches us these lessons in unexpected ways, doesn't it? If you found meaning in my journey from the service corridor to reclaiming my family's legacy, remember this: respect isn't just given because of blood ties. Sometimes it must be earned through difficult choices and brave actions. I hope my experience helps you find the courage to demand the respect you deserve in your own life. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say enough.